Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be teaching coding Python in the Blender game engine. And so this is just for like anybody who's new to coding and coding in the Blender game engine. So basically, I'll try to explain coding. And yeah, so basically coding is like, it's like a giant web, right? Think of it like a web. Well, that's why, they call it the World Wide Web, the internet, the web, right? So think of it like a web. See? And the web is like how everything connects with each other. So you have your, monitor here. Let's say this is your monitor. And this is your controller, right? And this is whatever code. This is like math, right? This is mathematics. And this is, a music file maybe. This is like a music file. And you see everything you put in this web, they intersect with each other, they connect, right? And the web itself is the code, is code. It's the code, is the web that connects everything. So that's one way to think about coding, right? And so, as you can see, this is the code here. This is Python, right? Because this computer, there's multiple languages. The computer only understands computer languages, but there's a lot of computer languages out there, These are the different languages. Like Python, that's the one that we're using. You got C++, C#, and you got Java. You got JavaScript, right? And each one of these coding languages pretty much work the same, but they're just like different in their own ways, but they all pretty much work the same, like the way you type stuff and stuff. That's the only difference. So as you can see here, we're using Python, and the way coding works is very much like reading a book, right? Computer works the same way when it goes through the code. It starts from line 1. You see all these lines here, and it goes from the top, reads the first line, second line, third line, and so on, from left to right and down, right? And it does this really fast, so fast that it's just like zooming through the code, right? And so yeah, usually in all coding languages you start from the top and you usually import the stuff you want to use, right? So from here we're importing logic. We're from Blender game engine, BGE. We're importing logic. So what we're using right now is the Blender game engine, and it's telling us that I'm telling it that I wanted to import logic, right? And what is logic? Well, it's right here. Logic. You see how everything connects like the spider web. So we're using the Blender game engine using the Blender game engine. and we're using logic, and you can see how they all connect now with each other. Every time you add something to the web, it's connected, so it's all one thing. And this coding, like I said, it can connect to your monitor, control, music files, math, on your computer really. And so this is the web, right? And it's connecting the logic here, and it's saying, this line is saying, from Blender Game Engine import events. What are events? Events are, you know, the mount in I don't know about other languages, but in this in Blender Game Engine, it's referring to events is referring to the keyboard and the mouse. So that's telling it that we want to get access to the computer's mouse and keyboard. So now look, we have the keyboard here, and now everything that we're connecting is the keyboard, the Blender Game Engine, the monitor, the logic, right? It's all connected like a giant web. And then you have something called variables, right? And these are variables, not this stuff, not this right here. Well, this is variable. These right here, cont, cube, scene, and if you know anything about math, it's important to know. You know, see, you got math here. Math, it's pretty helpful for a lot of things in coding. It's not always like necessary, but I mean it is necessary, but you don't have to be too good. Just know like a little bit about it. So anyways, if you don't know what a variable is, it's just like in mathematics, right? See, now using math and in mathematics, a variable is like a container, and it holds, you know, stuff inside of that container. But you have to name that variable something, right? And I'm gonna name it something, right? I'm gonna name this variable box. And what's inside my box? You know, it could be anything really. It could be a number. Could be true or false statement. I'll tell you what that is too later. You know, it could be a shirt. You know, it could be anything, right? So like in math, variables kind of work the same. You know, like math, I don't know if you've seen a plus 3 equals 6. So therefore, a must be 6 or 3. So you see, it's like a container. See how the variable is containing this, and that is what's going on here. See, I have my variable and I named it cont. This one I named it cube. This one and so on. And then you press equals, right? And it equals logic, which is this. And you press the dot. And what does the dot do? So basically, the dot. So we have our logic, right? And now our logic is branching out to other things. Logic basically means when you have logic and the dot, it basically means it's going through everything in logic. So logic contains a bunch of other stuff that you can do with it, like a list of stuff. Like it's like it's also like a variable that contains a bunch of stuff, right? Think of it like a variable too that contains a bunch of stuff. So this variable is called logic. It's kind of the same thing, right? So logic, this, but it's not a variable, it's actually this right here. And that dot means you want to access something from here. So from here, right, you want to access get the current scene, or yeah, get the current controller. And so you're getting the current controller, which is this right here, the player, right? So you want to get that current controller. That's how you want access to the player's controller. And then you want to get the controller owner, which is this. And then you want the scene, logic, get the current scene. So now you're getting the current scene here that you have. And then you want the scene, you want to get your object, and now it's referring to this object, which is your player, and now the keyboard, logic, keyboard, inputs. So if you know anything like about like input and output in like computers, basically it's pretty self-explanatory. When you press the keyboard, that's an input, and the output is what it's doing now. So now it's telling the player to walk, right? So that's the output, that's the input. Pretty self-explanatory. Input, output, right? So you have input, output. So now it's getting the keyboard's inputs, which are when you press it, the keyboard, you know, the player, object, and we're looking for the player. So these little brackets, these square brackets are like, I think, I'm not too sure about this one actually, but it's like a container that, you know, contains a bunch of stuff. And whenever you hit these exclamation marks here, it's called a string. So it's encoding a string is just like, you know, something that contains like a name of something or something, like words and stuff. It's a string, and it's telling us to get this one, the player, and you have to name it what it is, or else the code is not going to know what you're talking about, because the code is, it's not like a human where if you say I want an apple, you're accident, the human would know what you're talking about. But if you tell the computer I want an apple, but you spell it wrong, you say I want and bapple, it's not gonna know what a bapple is. Like a human's gonna know that you probably said it wrong, but a computer won't know. So you would have to get that right. You would have to get the spelling correct. And then for this one is basically a note. Basically it doesn't do anything to the code. This is just for the programmer to leave a note for himself to know what the code does, right? So whenever you make a note, you put the hashtag and you name it what you want. So for this one, I put a note here to tell me that this section is for movement, right? And this section here is for rotation. Another quick thing I want to tell you that is if you ever use Unity or other game engines, they usually have like, or other coding stuff. You usually, for like C#, I think, you would have to code the frames, you know, tell it to update the frames. But the cool thing about the Blender game engine is it's really easy to set up. You don't have to code it, the frames in here, right? Because the games, in the gaming world, is important to know that in the gaming world, everything works off frames, right? It's a frame of stuff happening in a sequence, like a slideshow. And that's how anything moving on the screen works. So if you're running at low frames, 3 frames, it's gonna go through those frames very slowly. Running at 30 frames, it's gonna go a little bit faster. Go at 60, and it's gonna go a pretty good, decent speed, which is like the typical thing you always hear, 60 frames. And so, cool thing is if you go to Logic and you set up an always sensor, this is gonna update every 60 frames, you know, as long as you set your thing to that. Anyways, you know, your frame rate here, I have mine at 60, and you see this is gonna update every 60 frames, so I no longer have to code that into here, right? So if I put on physics visualization debug properties, I mean, it might actually show how my frames are. I forgot how to show the frames. Oh, there it is. Okay, so yeah, I'll show you right there the frames running at 60 frames per second. Okay, so now let's go back to what this one means. And this one is an if statement. So basically, you know, coding, how coding works, it's basically built off binary code, zeros and ones, right? So really, behind the scenes, coding actually only works with binary, but Python converts itself into binary. That's why we have languages like Python to understand coding easier. So really, coding is just running off 2 things, like a light switch, off and on, right? But it's making so many different combinations with just these 2 that it starts to get complicated, you know. And that's kind of like how an if statement works. It works just like off and on switch, you know. So if, you know, if the keyboard is active, the W key is active, we're going to make our player move right in this direction, right? And that's, you know, the way everything in a video game moves is on an axis. So if you know anything about math, you'll know what I'm talking about. Is that on the axis here we have, you know, so yeah, there is a lot of math involved. So, and you know, math is not so hard. You just gotta, it's actually not so hard, right? I didn't know any math before I started making games, but I learned, like, so, you know, I didn't think it was so hard. Anyways, the axis, right, this is a 2D axis, and this is how, like, say this is your player, right? And your player is moving around on this axis, and these axes are on numbers, right? The top one 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And the same goes for across. So it's just all running off numbers, right? As you can see in Blender, we have the same thing. We have the axis right here. But this is a 3D axis, so it has the Z axis, right? So that's how we can see in all these different spaces. So whenever you see something like this, it's referring to those axes. And this is moving in, you know, this direction, the negative Y direction. This one's on the positive, and you know. And so the keyboard is getting the events, which is, like I said, is the keyboard, and it's getting the W key. It's active, right? And usually when you see these, it usually means that this under here is working for this. I don't really know how to explain this so much, but I just know that whenever you're doing this, like, code usually goes under, like, right here. So you see if I press enter, it automatically sets the thing to right there, because that has to be that way so it can read this part. I was telling you, if I press the W key is active, then the player is going to apply movement. And applied movement is like something that's built into the Blender game engine, right? So now you're getting the player and you're getting the dot and telling it you want to access the apply movement from the player, right? And then you're putting these parentheses. Oh, this is kind of hard to explain too, but usually when you see those brackets, like, it's usually means like something called a function. Just like in math, a function has to return something, right? Okay, so you have this bracket. We have two brackets here. Here, let's see. This bracket is for this, and this bracket. Wait, no, these purple brackets hold this, and these brackets hold what's going on here. And the comma is telling you, you also want to tell it that it's true, right? True or false is like yes or no. So that's true. See, and you press it, it gets purple. See, so you know that is this. That inside here contains this and this function. Here, this contains this, and so on. And this is for rotation, and it's pretty much the same thing. So this video is getting long, so I have to end it. So I'm gonna make more coding videos. That was just like the basics of how to, you know, understanding of coding, you know, and then you can see the code working here, you know, working in code. So yeah, in the next video, I'm gonna be making more videos. This video just got long, so yeah.